Good afternoon. The Barrie Police Services meeting is delayed approximately 5 minutes and will begin at 4:35.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sarah, can you confirm those? We have everybody present at this time?
Good afternoon. Yes, everyone is present.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I can confirm I received the regrets from Mayor Lehman. He will not be able to attend. He had a conflict in his schedule, but with the members present, we do have a forum. And begin with our usual way of the land acknowledgement that the Barrie Police Service acknowledges this sacred land has been the site of human activity for 15,000 years. The land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabe Nation. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Miigwech. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda that was distributed in advance for today's meeting. Mr. Khan? Seconder? Ms. Strawn? Any questions, comments on the agenda? Seeing none, those in favor? Thank you. Any declarations of conflict of interest with respect to the items presented in today's agenda? Seeing none, thank you. A motion to approve our minutes of our January 20th, 22 board meeting. Mr. Khan? Councillor Thompson? Any questions, comments with respect to the minutes? Seeing none, those in favor? Thank you. Well, Chief, I'd like to turn it over to you with respect to the board receiving an update with respect to the 2021 or preliminary findings of the 2020 Barrie Police Service Community Safety Survey. Chief, please.
Thank you very much, Chair Ferguson and members of the board. I am going to pass this on directly to Inspector Rob Berg of Executive Services, and he will introduce our very dedicated and experienced team from our Executive Services area that were responsible for our presentation today. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, Chief, and members of the board. So we're going to, following a short introduction here, we're going to present the preliminary findings from our 2021 Community Safety Survey. This will be important data and vital to us building our next business plan, which is on the horizon. We've got that set up to meet in May. So we're already starting to gather the information and data that we're going to build on that. In the meeting room, you can see Staff Sergeant Linda Morehouse and Victoria Tumalowicz. They'll both be presenting on the results that we have. The one thing we can do for this presentation is, again, COVID has kept on going and going and going. So the community safety survey that we put out last year actually is a very good comparator to the first community safety survey we put out in 2020. So with no further ado, I'll pass it over to Staff Sergeant Morehouse and Victoria for the presentation. And of course, we'll take any questions or inquiries after the presentation.
Thanks, Inspector Burke. Nice to see everybody again. Thanks for your time today. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes presenting to you some of the highlights from the 2021 Community Safety Survey. For a more comprehensive look, a detailed report was provided to you, I believe, last week. The survey is distributed annually to gather insight regarding public perception of the Barrie Police Service and community safety. The survey period of November 1st to December 17th replicated the time given to the 2020 survey, and in 2021, we received 1,385 responses. Comparatively, the 2020 survey received 1,667 responses. This may be attributed to an increased focus on policing at that time due to some highly publicized events. While we did receive fewer responses this year, it was a more diverse sampling, and that reinforces one of our goals for this community safety survey. The findings being presented today offer measurable benchmarks that we can use to help assess the service's year-over-year progress in alignment with community needs, and will help inform the direction of the Barrie Police 2023 to 2025 strategic plan. Looking at the demographics of survey respondents, we are mindful of how they relate to the demographics of the city of Barrie. By comparing the two, we can determine any commonalities and identify areas for focus and expansion in our communication plan for next year. The 2021 survey had a sample consisting of 52% female and 38% male respondents. A small percentage identified as non-binary or transgender, and 8% preferred not to answer. Similarly, the city of Barrie also has a slight female majority, although gender was limited to male or female in the 2016 census survey. With respect to household total income, the majority of respondents belong to the range of $100,000 or higher. In 2016, the median total income for the city of Barrie was just under $34,000. Bearing in mind this figure is 6 years old, and the team will reassess this once the 2021 census data is available. Many survey participants ranged between 30 and 59 years of age. According to the 2016 census, the average age in Barrie is 39 years old. So overall, this suggests that our survey is distributed well throughout our community, but work is still needed to get it not just to service providers, but also to the residents that utilize community partners, initiatives, and programs. Key findings from the survey were very similar to 2020. On a positive note, the data shows a 2% increase in the overall public perception of safety in our downtown core, as well as a clear message that the Barrie Police Service is valued and supported in the community. Themes that were identified in both the 2020 and 2021 survey include a continued request for the expansion of traffic programs that are focused on safety, increased police presence and visibility throughout the city, explore ways to minimize substance abuse. And while data suggests residents who are familiar with BPS resources and find that they are helpful and important, it also shows that we need to enhance public awareness of our resources and services. I will touch on all of these in more detail as the presentation continues. We asked survey participants about their perception of safety during daylight hours in the city of Barrie. The blue bars indicate the volume of respondents who feel safe. The yellow bars represent respondents who feel neutral, neither meaning safe or unsafe. And the gray bars are for those who feel unsafe within a specified area. We asked survey participants how safe they feel at night in specific areas of Barrie. Overall, the 3 locations perceived as most safe at either time are personal residences, shopping centers in the respondent specific neighborhood. The top 3 areas identified as least safe are consistent with 2020 findings and are downtown Barrie, roadways for pedestrians or cyclists, and public parks. Despite the slight increase in perception of safety in the downtown core, the Barrie Police Service acknowledges it is still an area of concern and continues to initiate more safety programs, including enhancing our downtown CCTV system and its data quality, the introduction of our Community Safety and Wellbeing Officer, Kira Brooks, who works alongside our Community Safety and Wellbeing team. Both have a shared focus on community engagement and addressing social disorder throughout Barrie. And finally, continued exploration of new and existing initiatives through an evidence-based policing lens. Respondents were also asked for their 5 primary safety concerns in the entire city. We found the results were consistent with 2020, with one notable difference of traffic safety moving up to be the 2nd largest concern. This is always an area of focus, and our service continues to introduce projects to address traffic safety issues, including hotspot enforcement to monitor high-risk intersections, school zones, modified vehicles, and other road safety concerns. Project Wake Up Call, a 4-week project targeting stop sign and speeding infractions conducted over the summer of 2021. And Project Erase, eliminating racing activity on streets everywhere, focusing on addressing community-raised issues regarding noisy motor vehicles that resulted in 65 charges. This data is important as it helps guide our focus for current and future projects. Diving deeper into the data, the survey asked participants about safety concerns that are specific to their neighborhood. Respondents were asked to indicate if they live and work in Barrie, and specifically their neighborhood safety concern. You can see here on the slide how public perception of safety differs based on that information. From the previous slide, we saw substance abuse as the #1 priority overall. But for neighborhood-specific concerns, the #1 priority becomes traffic safety and speeding. Safety concerns differ again according to those who strictly work or visit Barrie. We now see traffic safety, disorderly conduct, and child abuse and trauma as our #1 responses for these 3 groups. This information offers us an opportunity to have more targeted communications and initiatives that relate to the unique needs of our community and specific neighborhoods. It allows us to ask what group we want to target and with what goal in mind. This becomes helpful when planning future town halls for our local residents, because we know that traffic safety will be the primary topic as a neighborhood-specific concern, whereas citywide substance abuse is the most prominent topic. Another use for data mining is by comparing responses based on whether someone identifies as a witness or a victim. For example, only 18% of respondents said they had been a victim or a witness of crime. Of that 18%, 5 primary offenses can be seen on your right and are very similar to 2020. Physical assault, vandalism, theft of personal property, theft of household property, and breaking and entering are the 5 main offenses. This data becomes useful because we can group responses based on need and familiarity of services for victims and witnesses. The same can be applied to responses based on those who have or have not had contact with the Barrie Police Service. We will demonstrate this in the next few slides. The Community Safety Survey asked respondents if they did or did not interact with the Barrie Police over the past year. As you can see on the slide, almost 60% of respondents have not had any contact with the Barrie Police over the past 12 months. And of the 40% that did interact with our service, most were reporting a crime, calling 911, had general community engagement, witnessed a crime, or were involved with a traffic violation. Taking a deeper look into the percentage breakdown, we can strengthen our understanding and assessment of our approachability and accountability. Public perception is a metric that helps us evaluate the trust and transparency our service has within the community. This slide represents the results of our respondents who did not have any points of contact with the Barrie Police in 2021. The results show strong support for our service, especially in the questions relating to confidence, fair treatment, and trust. The findings are slightly different when we view these results through the lens of someone who has had one or more points of contact. We see a 9% decrease in respondents who believe that Barrie Police treats everyone fairly. We also see a 9% decrease in the trust that respondents have that Barrie Police will make decisions that are good for everyone in the city. And we see a 6% decrease in confidence that Barrie Police can do its job well. These results will be used to review and shape initiatives that will lead to increased support from citizens who utilize our services. Initiatives such as the annual Community Safety Survey, systemic review of organizational culture and systems, the creation of our Community Safety and Wellbeing team, researching and developing ways to improve customer service through alternative call response methods, exploring ways to increase officer and vehicle visibility as well as approachability, and a pivot towards evidence-based policing. These will work towards helping us understand and improve the public's perception of the Barrie Police Service. Increase in awareness of Barrie Police initiatives and programs may result in strengthened community engagement and authentic two-way communication. Programs like our Auxiliary Police and Vulnerable Persons Registry continue to be our most recognized, while newer initiatives such as Inside Out will have an initial benchmark this year and an opportunity to grow its awareness. It will be especially interesting as we continue to evaluate the awareness of all these programs through various lenses. Overall, the data collected through the Community Safety Survey suggests the community is aware and supportive of the Barrie Police Service. The data from 2021 builds on existing benchmarks that offer comparative year-over-year information and helps guide strategic priorities to address community needs. The data collected will inform our 2023 to 25 strategic plan and assist with evidence-based decision-making in community safety and well-being initiatives for the service. Going forward, we will also continue to explore different survey instruments to strengthen our data collection and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. The data accumulation just continues to expand. I'll open up the questions from the board. Are there any questions with respect to the presentation? Ms. Strawn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Very informative. I guess one of the questions I have is how we share this information with our partners, and I'm specifically thinking about the city of Barrie. And when I think of that, some of the areas that are highlighted for me about where people feel unsafe, traffic safety, pedestrians, cyclists, and parks. And I'm often a pedestrian and I do often feel unsafe walking, and it doesn't have anything to do with police or anything that the police could do about it. It has to do with the proper infrastructure is not there for me to walk safely. So how can we break this down further or address some of these concerns by advocating to the city that in order for us to do our job well, we need their support on having proper infrastructure in place, specifically on roadways and in parks?
I can, thanks very much. Through the chair to Ms. Strawn, thanks very much for that question. We have built a relationship with the city of Barrie, their planning department. Now, when I talk planning department, I'm not talking the building and roads and that. I'm actually talking their strategic planning department. So I think that's our first connection that we can make with them. The city staff did share their information in regards to the 40-year plan. So I think a reciprocal sharing of our data through them could be the first step for that. But it is a very good point, actually, and puts a different lens on it from strictly a policing perspective, because when we see that the concerns are traffic safety, we immediately then turn to our traffic unit, who has the relationship with the councillors and the different wards. So I do actually appreciate that comment and that kind of viewpoint, because it does put a different lens on it for us to reach into the city and see how the city could leverage the data that we've collected. So that's actually a very eye-opening question, and thanks very much for asking that. Linda or Staff Morehouse, do you have anything to add to that?
No, thank you. I would agree that's a great question, actually, and I think it would be very beneficial to have some conversations with the city traffic department and share this information with them and see how they can leverage it in terms of perhaps doing their own data analysis or survey with respect to why people don't necessarily feel safe as a pedestrian. As Councillor Strawn said, you know, it may have absolutely nothing to do with the traffic on the streets. It might have something to do with lighting or where they're walking or sidewalks. So that's a great point. It also will assist us too, I think, you know, as we develop further surveys and try to determine how we're going to drill down even further with answers. You know, this may be something that we can utilize to try and get a more specific reading from people about what is it that doesn't make them feel safe. Thank you.
Members of the board, we have also used our last year's community safety and results that connected directly with our community safety and well-being plan for the city of Barrie. And that sharing will continue as we are evaluating our current actions overall as the city, and utilizing our results to support some of the work that the city is doing for the planning.
Mr. Khan, please.
Thanks, Chair. I did have a similar question, slightly different, regarding lighting. Obviously, we've heard in the past that, you know, providing lighting in a park can potentially provide a false sense of security. I presume that is still the thought around that. But with regard to the cycling traffic or pedestrian traffic, I'm still baffled. We see other cities that have they're far older than Barrie. And they have separated bike lanes, or we see, you know, we know in the south end and the annexation lands is referred to, or secondary lands as it's referred to, we're building thousands of homes but no separated bike lanes. So is there I often wonder, I ask the question, I don't know why the city wouldn't take guidance that perhaps there are other measures that could be implemented. Yes, there's a cost, but, you know, if we're looking at a 40-year plan, is there a trend that we're expecting to go towards increased cycling or use of bike lanes, et cetera? So I was curious if that data can be shared and if we can provide any other supporting documents to them to I don't know, encourage that. There's a question in there, and that is, you know, what are we doing in terms of comparing safety in other cities regarding cyclists and pedestrians with how we're doing here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Khan, thanks very much for that question. The data we presented right now is just strictly focused on the responses from the city of Barrie. It's not something that we looked at in regards to our comparators. Certainly something that we could reach out to, but I think in further to the chief's comments in regards to the community safety and well-being plan and the partnerships where we are a main partner with the city and a number of other organizations, that certainly is that's the beginning of the information sharing platform, and certainly something we can explore more.
Thank you. With regard to the balance of the study, obviously I don't know if it's a pat on the back that's warranted, but certainly it is positive in the sense that every one of the columns that I looked at, and I'll be biased, I looked at strongly agree in general, and then neither agree nor disagree. I figure if somebody strongly disagrees with their level of confidence in the city of Barrie, they wouldn't choose to enter their response to neither yes nor no. in terms of their opinion. So I think it is relatively or rather favorable information, and I think that the service can take that as a positive for sure. So thank you for the information.
Mr. Strawn, sorry I didn't give you an opportunity for a follow-up there. And I think you're on mute now.
Of course I am. Okay. Just one of the other things I'm hoping that we can look at is the perception of safety in the downtown. And I'd love for us to put the population of downtown, keep track of that along with the results, because there is a theory on that the more people that are living downtown, the more safe the downtown will feel, or the perception of safety will go up, whether it's actually safer or not. People feel like it's safer because there's more people out walking around, there's more eyes on the street. Like, we hear this all the time. And so I'd love to track the population at the time of the survey so that we can see if the perception of safety in the downtown is actually changing as the population in the downtown increases, with more building permits being issued and more people living in the downtown core in the coming years.
Thank you. That's something that we will certainly look at if we have the ability to capture that information. And I think this is an opportunity also to highlight the community safety and well-being teams that are working in our whole city and are working closely with individuals in our downtown that are from the vulnerable population, that are our merchants, and our residents in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you. And I would agree. I think that our service is doing a great job. And I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if it can be broken down further, even. Like, I wonder how people who live in the downtown perceive the safety of the downtown versus people who don't live in the downtown. Like, I perceive the downtown probably as safer than a lot of people, but I live closer to the downtown. And so I wonder if there's a difference there as well. I don't know if that's something that's measurable, but it's interesting for sure.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Ms. Strawn. We actually indicate we allow the participants to indicate what ward they reside in when that's some of the data. But again, the more data, the better. So it's certainly something we can review going forward, trying to even further centralize to try to identify where the respondents are answering those questions from.
I have one question, and I recognize that the sample size is extremely small, but the last slide in which a number of the respondents conveyed that they were not familiar with the various programs. Do you see any type of course of action coming from that would allow those programs to perhaps become more familiar in the community?
As a service, we work. Oh, sorry, Inspector Burke, go ahead.
No, Chief, you go ahead. We're probably going to say something very similar.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. As a service, through our corporate communications, we understand the importance of highlighting what programs we do offer, what response there is in our community, and we will be highlighting the ones that illustrated that are not so common to the average citizen. And if you did note also on the slide, some people did not participate in answering those questions either. So the sample size is even smaller than those that participated in the full survey.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions from members? Not seeing any. Well, thank you very, very much for the update. I'd say that the more information that's made available to the board, the better, and the accumulation of data over years will be significant as well. So I thank you for the presentation. I have received in advance, Councillor Thompson has advised me of a conflict, so he will be leaving the meeting. I think he said approximately 5:05, Councillor Thompson. So thank you for making the time to get part of it in for us. We appreciate that. And I can advise we still have quorum. So thank you, sir. Deputy Allen, always wait with anticipation for the update on the statistics. And I saw in advance you put your package together. I wonder if you would take the time to walk both the board and the public through the 2021 year-end statistics, please.
Thanks, Chair. I want to make a note here. Victoria is going to share her screen and put the presentation on. Also here to assist with any questions or concerns, and very much the brains behind this presentation is Nicole Lees, our manager of our records information management services. Okay, if you don't mind, Victoria, to the next slide. The data in this presentation is current as of January 26, 2022. As mentioned in previous presentations, the data is subject to influencers, whether some of the information is enforcement driven or complaint driven. And the Poisson distribution is basically a statistical method to calculate what we consider normal levels. And this is the method used behind much of our dashboards. Today, we're going to be looking at our presentation. We'll be looking at calls for service, occurrences and violations, offenses and crimes, provincial offense notices, notable events or initiatives that may have statistical relatability. Each slide will include a 5-year quarterly comparison for each group, as well as the 5-year annual comparison. This allows us to demonstrate the year end now that the data has been compiled. Lastly, the slides in each include the top 5 violations that contribute to the group total. From a year-end perspective, a comprehensive review has shown only minor variances from quarter to quarter. Calls for service, the 5-year average is 68,699. At 73,696 for our year end, we are trending upwards. This was anticipated and is not concerning, as COVID made 2020 low, and we are now seeing that calls for service are returning to similar levels as that we saw in 2019. Please note the top 5 contributors for this quarter. Thank you. Occurrences and violations. Note that occurrences are captured are for all police activity, not just calls from those in our community. Occurrences may also be generated from online self-reports as well as police-generated occurrences. Thanks, Victoria. Over the year, we observe in our PON category that there's a large decrease quarter to quarter. Overall, there is an increase over past years. It's observed that our 5-year annual average is 9,623, and our year-end reflects 10,699. So our overall average for year-end has increased. I'm going to take you through 4 notable events that had occurred at this quarter, or very close to the quarter. Operation Impact, I think we heard a little bit about this in the last presentation. It was held October 8th to 11th of 21. It's a national public awareness campaign aimed at making Canada's roads the safest in the world. Police across the country focus on behaviors that put drivers, passengers, and other road users at risk, with a focus on impaired driving, aggressive driving, distracted driving, and driving without a seatbelt. During this initiative, 2 criminal charges were laid, complemented by another 27 provincial offense notices. The festive ride occurred over 7 dates throughout November and December. The program, however, is always conducted all year long. I want to note that we checked 274 vehicles And of those 274, we conducted alcohol screen device tests 237 times. We laid 7 charges of over 80, 3 impaired driving charges, and we laid another 11 provincial offense notices under the Highway Traffic Act. New to the Barrie Police, as the board is already aware, we commenced the adult diversion program in mid-November in partnership with the Ministry of Attorney General, Elizabeth Fry Society, and the Barrie Native Friendship Center. Working closely with these partners, adult offenders are now given the opportunity to seek structured counseling for their possible addictions, mental health issues, or any other challenges which led to the offenses committed. Research has shown that restorative justice for low harm offenses benefits both the accused and the victim when compared to the experience that is typically found in the criminal justice system for these minor offenses. There were a total of 21 criminal charges diverted in the fourth quarter. Sorry, 31. This graffiti-related mischiefs actually occurred in the third quarter, but we didn't have all the information at the time. It's important to note it in this report. A total of 113 criminal charges were laid amongst 5 accused persons. Sadly, I can report that there was in excess of $75,000 in damages due to the hundreds of graffiti-related incidents that took place in our community. Crimes against persons, we see a very slight increase quarter to quarter, but overall within normal and holding steady long term. The 5-year average for the annual trend is 1,574, while our current year end is at 1,511. Specific to intimate partner violence, I note that there is some increase since 2015, but nothing significant over the past 2 years. Please note that this could be attributed to improvements of data quality as we have, and we will continue to monitor this. In 2020, when attending intimate partner violence calls for service, criminal charges were laid 19% of the time, while in 2021, we laid 22%, laid charges 22% of the time. Charges may not always be attributed to the intimate partner violence, but likely in most cases. For example, in some instances, there might be warrants or other matters, drug offenses or something located at that time. As it relates to property crime, we see a very slight decrease quarter to quarter, but overall still downward trend. The 5-year annual trend averages at 3,352 violations, while we sit at 2,519 for our year end. There are considerations and most likely COVID-related impacts over the past 2 years. Further, as it relates to the last quarter, we must consider the statistical effect of the diversion program I spoke of, and the impact that there's potentially 27 criminal charges that could have been attributed to that category, which now may not show up in these statistics. I will note that the top 5 contributors, all but number 4, break and enter, would qualify for the diversion program. In drug offenses, we see a decrease quarter to quarter. The 5-year annual average is 414, and the current year end is at 456. It's trending up, but not statistically concerning. We will continue to monitor this as well. Please recognize that in most cases, drug-related charges are a direct result of proactive police activity that may inflate the statistics. I want to let the board know as well that the service continues to expand and utilize technology to have the greatest impact on harm reduction in our city. Further, by utilizing the Community Safety and Wellbeing Unit, community concern and issues of social disorder are being addressed. The Barrie Police Service continues to be an active partner in the Simcoe-Muskoka opiate strategy, and the service continues to participate in conversations regarding decriminalization, harm reduction, and safe supply through the OACP and other community partners. In criminal traffic violations, there is a significant decrease last quarter to this quarter, but it looks to be returning to normal levels when we look at the previous quarters. Note that the 5-year annual average is 596, and our current year end represents 586, While we see a decrease in the last quarter, the 5-year average supports that our year-end statistics are stable. Of note, our service conducted many drug recognition evaluations this year. In the last quarter, we did 26 evaluations, plus an additional 4 for other services for a total of 30. Annually, we completed 114 evaluations, plus an additional 22 for other services, combining for a total of 136 evaluations. In other criminal code violations, we see a decrease quarter to quarter. The 5-year annual average is 1,762. So at 1,594, we are trending low. Please note the bolded top 3 of the top 5 contributors in this classification: breach probation, bail violations, fail to attend court, and fail to appear. The Barrie Police Service will work collaboratively with community agencies to address those persons repeatedly committing low-level administrative type offenses that are caught up in what is being referred to as catch and release. A recent example sees an individual that was arrested by the service who had 23 outstanding charges stemming from 13 different releases. It is apparent that this individual does not have the ability to uphold the conditions placed upon them by the courts. With the introduction of the Community Safety Wellbeing Unit, and specifically under the mandate of the Community Engagement Team, the focus will be to address some of the underlying issues contributing to the repeat low-level crimes in our community. By working jointly with social service community agencies, this team will be able to focus on the reform of this individual and others like them, rather than the court's sentencing. This multi-sectoral approach will contribute to a collective focus on overall community and safety well-being. Further, while we expected to see a large increase in fail to appears, this is now not the case. We have since created a new process where we're only laying this charge after a full investigation. So while we did anticipate some, we do not now anticipate a surge in these charges coming out of COVID. The miscellaneous group is reserved for internal codes and municipal bylaws. Statistics Canada does not use these violations for any analytical purpose. However, this group is a large part of what we do. We record and track this information within our records management system to complete analysis, resource planning, and program development within our community. The 5-year annual average rests at 65,612. So with our year end being at 71,652, we are trending up. This is also captured in quarters 1 through 3 this year, as we have seen a steady increase in each. Subject to any questions of the board, thank you for being part of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Deputy Allen. Any questions from members? Not seeing. I have one, Deputy Allen, with respect to the provincial offense notices. You advise us that going back as many as 5 years ago, every quarter they decline. Is there a reason that you might be why that has happened? Obviously, 21 was the same as 17. Is there a reason why that occurs?
Absolutely, Chair. There's a number of reasons why that can occur. For one, the bulk of our provincial offences notices are written by the enforcement section of our traffic services unit, and given any time of the year, they may have training obligations, they could have annual leave, and also be tied up with complex investigations. We've had some fatals and those types of things. So when they are required to do any of those things and they are pulled off the road, we will see a dip in the amount of PONs being issued.
Thank you. That makes sense. Any further questions? Deputy Allen, you and your team, thank you very much again for a very informative presentation and keeping us up to date on the statistics. We appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Victoria, for running the show there.
Thank you, Victoria. There were 3 items in our consent agenda. A motion to receive the consent agenda items. Ms. Strawn? Mr. Khan? Yeah. Any items, or questions that anybody has with respect to the 3 consent agenda items? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. Thank you. Back to you, please, Chief, for your update for the open board meeting, please.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the board. As I have provided in the last couple of years, the COVID update, the Barrie Police Service continues to experience minimal staffing concerns from the Omicron variant due to illness or isolation requirements. We will continue to monitor our resources and redeploy when required to ensure that there is a consistent and uninterrupted policing services provided to our community. As many are aware, the past 3 Saturdays, the city of Barrie has seen convoys of vehicle travel throughout the city in support of the ongoing protest against the COVID mandates, vaccination, and other policies. The convoy has resulted in traffic congestion for approximately 3 hours on each of the Saturdays, but I am able to state that the convoys have remained peaceful in nature, with rules of the road being followed. We will continue to monitor these events and work with the organizers to ensure that there is safety and well-being for all people in our community. Within the last week, both provincial and federal emergency legislation has been enacted to deal with threats to critical infrastructure and national security posed by the ongoing blockades occurring in Ottawa and various locations throughout Ontario and Canada. Our officers are versed in the details of the new pieces of legislation. However, we do not anticipate the need to utilize this legislation here in Barrie at this point. The next slide is one that I continue to include in the Chief's update, and we had a very comprehensive overview of our statistics and our CAD calls for service by Deputy Allen, and I can say, as he has indicated, that we have seen some consistency month to month and year over year. I won't get into any other details in regards to that. If we look at some of our investigations that I'm able to highlight, I'm sure many of us heard on February 9th that the Barrie Police Service became involved in an investigation involving the whereabouts of a 3-year-old child. Our investigators sought the assistance of the provincial Amber Alert program, which provided important details about this young child across Ontario. After a very intense investigation that continued through that night and into the early morning hours, we are very fortunate that the young child was located and returned to the city of Barrie. A second investigation that I would like to highlight is that of an arrest of a 35-year-old male who was believed to have robbed 2 convenience stores in their city within a 12-hour period. The suspect was quickly identified and subsequently located, but one of our uniformed officers who effected the arrest of that male. He has been charged with 2 counts of robbery. Many of you may also be aware, members of the board and those in the community, that we are actively investigating a shooting that occurred at a home on Bayfield Street a couple of days ago. 2 victims are reported in serious but stable condition in trauma centers in Toronto. And although our investigation is ongoing, I can assure the community that the shooting appears isolated in nature and there are no concerns for public safety at this time. We continue to look for witnesses, but there has been no arrest made at this time. Although not highlighted on the slide here, I'd like to quickly mention that earlier today we released details of 2 recent investigations, one involving the arrest of a 36-year-old male after a lengthy investigation involving the possession and distribution of child pornography, and another second investigation addressing construction site theft, where a 27-year-old was arrested and charged with property crime offenses. On January the 31st, Deputy Allen and Deputy Johnston were provided an opportunity to update and provide information about our community safety and well-being unit to council members at the city. At this presentations, both deputies spoke about the police role in the city's community safety and well-being plan, as well as our new unit's evidence-based and data-driven approach to deployment. Our service innovative deployment approach uses high harm data and is receiving global recognition, including a mention at a American Society of Criminology prestigious Vulner Award address this past month. And then on September, there goes the year, February 7th, we welcomed 3 new members to our service, all joining our communications unit. Our new members are seen here pledging their oath of secrecy and are all very excited to begin their career as emergency call takers and dispatchers. A very valuable resource to our community. On February the 15th, we officially announced our community safety and well-being teams. I spoke about it earlier, and the deputies also spoke about that earlier in their presentation to council. And our teams will use, as mentioned, data-driven approach to deploy to areas and issues that require police attention. One team will focus on addressing high harm occurrence, and the second team will work closely with community services agencies to collaboratively address homelessness, addictions, mental health concerns within our community. And as we speak about the community, it's always a pleasure to talk about our community collaborative highlights this past month. And one of them includes our Valentine's Day card initiative with Simcoe County schools, students, and community agencies that brought over 3,000 Valentine's Day cards to seniors. And it was very interesting. We received a correspondence from the principal of Coddington Public School, Miss Rocca, who advised a card recipient, a retired teacher, had called their school to offer her thanks to the students. This individual had taught at Coddington from 1952 to 1955. It was a wonderful coincidence that one of their cards had made it to one of their very own. So think about that. 70 years later, I can say once a Coddington Cardinal, always a Coddington Cardinal. So it is nice that we can touch the hearts of so many. Our service has also partnered with the City of Barrie and is offering our Inside Out program at the Holly Community Center's after-school drop-in program. So here is a plug to our community to advise you about one of our programs. The Inside Out program is led by our special constables with a focus on helping youth develop a positive sense of self, health relationships, and or healthy relationships, and a sense of community responsibility and belonging. I would also like to mention the strong relationship that our service and other law enforcement agencies have with Special Olympics. not just locally, in Ontario and across the country. We are supporting Special Olympics athletes reach their full potential emotionally and mentally and physically is truly an honor for the policing community. Events like the Polar Plunge and the Torch Run are always ways that we can support fundraising for our local athletes of our Special Olympics. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Tim Horton's campaign for Special Olympics that took place from January the 28th to the 30th. The Choose to Include donut was sold during this weekend with all proceeds donated to Special Olympics. And it's really not difficult to find some police officers willing not only to purchase the donuts, but we do consume donuts and do love them. And as board members, you recall that last month we presented exemplary police medals and pins to some of our sworn and civilian members who had qualified after 10, 20, or 30 years of exemplary services to policing. And we continued with some of our presentations over the past month and honored several more members as they received their deserving medals and pins. And I'd like the opportunity to congratulate those that are in the photos in our last slide today. So thank you very much, members of the board, and to the community. We hope we can continue to highlight some of the great programs that we offer with the Barrie Police Service.
Thank you very much, Chief, for the update and letting us know a little bit of what's going on outside of traditional police work. So we appreciate that. Any questions from the board for Chief Greenwood? Seeing none. Okay, thanks again, Chief. Our next meeting will be Thursday, March the 17th, 2022. It will be in person at headquarters. I can advise the public that we will be doing a hybrid approach, certainly initially, so we will be live as well as in person. We'll reassess that at a later time, but we will go back to in person, all things being the same as they are today. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Khan, Ms. Strawn, thank you very much, everyone, for all the hard work and pulling things together. We appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Everyone.
Best wishes.